Hey, we're live, pal. I am Double G here with my dream team. Starting off with Denise Salcedo, who is soon to celebrate her 100th episode of Speak Now, which is also in this feed on this YouTube channel. Denise, what's going on?
You said it, man. 100 episodes tomorrow. Today for my NXT post show, it's 99 episodes of Speak Now Pro Wrestling. Tomorrow, 100 episodes. I gotta say, I am just so happy and I cannot wait. It kind of feels a little weird. It went by so fast where I'm like, I really did 100 episodes. I quadruple counted to make sure.
And if you check Denise's Twitter, she's got a little action going on the Twitter where you can win some stuff. So check out her Twitter about this upcoming show. Anything else you want to say about that?
$100 shop AEW gift card is what I'm giving away for the show tomorrow, and the winner will be announced on the actual show. So it's just a fun little way to honor the 100 episodes. I feel like you have to do something grand for that, and I was like, well, I don't have any idea, so this is it. This is the grand idea.
It's a good grand idea, especially because AEW is so hot right now. And so also joining, as per usual, Andrew Zarian, who will be live at Arthur Ashe Stadium on Wednesday. I'm at Arthur Ashe Stadium kind of in the background there. Andrew, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm excited. Tomorrow's going to be a fun show. Over 20,000 people potentially in my backyard in New York City. Denise, listen, you're giving a $100 gift card. I have a stack of hundreds here. All right.
This is what I mean.
This is what we'll do. I'm going to 1, 2, 3, let's say $400 right here, right? Any one of your viewers tomorrow will get $500. You know what, Denise? You know what? I saw your tweet about my shoes. This is what I think of giving them money, right? This is what I think about giving them money, your viewers. How about that?
Andrew, look, I am tired of you always trying to one-up me with your lavish lifestyle. I am for the everyday people. I am for the Converse-wearing, non-fancy shoes people.
You know, I could tell you went to the Jets game, and I mean, you are the common people. You went to the Jets game. That's where we shove all our derelicts from New York City. You know, people are like, New York City's getting a little safer. No. We just shove them to a Jets game. That's what we do in New York.
No,
the people's champ.
No comment, Andrew. You know what? That's it. This is a war. Be very, very, very afraid. Sleep with one eye open. You know what? I hope those eyebrows are insured.
You know what?
Wow.
Don't you start, because my wife threatens me with shaving my eyebrows off all the time. When I get out of line, that's her threat to me, that she's going to shave one of my eyebrows off. And I sleep with one eye open already. So the worst has been done.
Don't worry. I'm going to finally do what she's been saying she's going to do. I'm going to help her out. We're going to coordinate.
Can you imagine? I mean, that would be fantastic.
And I would put it on YouTube.
that would be many YouTube hits. Please put it somehow aligned with this show. We'll get so many new hits. In our fourth chair, we have a fourth person today from Wrestle Talk, Tempest. Welcome to the show, and thanks for sitting in our fourth chair.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I feel like I'm walking into this with so much tension. Denise and Andrew are trying to one-up each other. I don't know what I'm walking into, but I'm hoping that I'm here for a good time.
You're definitely in here for a good time.
We'll see. We'll see how the show goes.
You see, I'm welcoming. I'm so nice to the guest, and Andrew's like, well, we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, maybe Denise will embarrass you a little bit. I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah,
well, she's already done that. She's done that plenty of times, not recognizing me the first time we met.
Do you guys know that story? No. Do you guys know the story?
He is wearing a mask.
Well, I didn't recognize him in Chicago. I was sitting down outside and I heard someone say Denise, and I turned around and I was like, hi, how are you? What's your name? And he was like, Denise, it's me, it's Tempest. And I was like, oh my God.
And to be fair, she has seen me without the mask before. This was not the very first time that she had seen me without a mask.
Again. Hollywood Denise.
Just a big shot.
This is what happens.
It was accidental.
All right, so I very much enjoy the jovialness of our open here. I just want to let folks know we're going to start slightly serious here with topics, but it'll get back to what we normally do, which is have a lot of fun and talk about pro wrestling. The reason why we're slightly starting a little serious is because the Dark Side of the Ring episode aired last week after we recorded, and it featured the plane ride from hell. And if you are a pro wrestling fan / historian, you probably know a whole lot about this plane ride. And I felt that I probably knew a little bit too much because I was just kind of numb to the whole thing. And then I went to read Denise's Twitter, and I saw her outrage in what was being portrayed on the TV. And I kind of woke up to it, and I was like, you know what? That is the right reaction to all of these stories that I've heard so many times. And Denise, we're going to do a quick segment here, but I did want to talk to you about those reactions because I didn't know if you had known much about that story before you saw it on TV. I know people were probably pinging you to watch it because they wanted your reaction. That's why you're so good at what you do, because people do want to hear what you have to say. But what was your sort of history with that story before you watched the Dark Side episode?
Right. So I think that's very important to clarify is like the stories that I knew about the plane ride from hell were, obviously knew of Shawn cutting Michael Hayes' ponytail, of, the Brock Lesnar and Kurt Hennig fighting, Goldust singing. I knew that. That for me was like, whatever. Okay. But what I felt was very, very, it was just so wrong. And I don't even know where to begin because it wasn't necessarily just, the Ric Flair incident or whatever you want to call it with him essentially forcing himself onto the flight attendant. It was, that was terrible, right? But on top of that, you had RVD casually dropping in this comment about the local boys essentially putting, the talent essentially putting the local girls to sleep with this pill. I don't know what you call it, whatever, this pill, making them go to sleep. Thank you. So that they can essentially have their way with them. And the way that was so casually dropped, it was just kind of like, I'm sorry. Like, I know he said that it was quote unquote normal back then. That, I'm sorry, is never normal in no matter what time period or anything. And so that was very upsetting. The Ric Flair thing about, when, she was speaking about him essentially putting her hands on his genitals and forcing that, it was upsetting because it's like, what the hell? Like, I don't know, man. I wasn't around during this time. I wasn't there, but it's like, I can't fathom in my head how that was ever acceptable. And then she also was, sexually assaulted also by Scott Hall. And I know that saying sexually assaulted may sound dramatic, but it's not. I'm sorry. A man grabs my shirt and, does what he did to her, with her breast and all of that and trying to lick her or bite or whatever he was trying to do. That is sexual assault. And I'm sorry, but that is not okay whatsoever. And so like kind of hearing all of that, those were the portions of the story that I did not know about. And then on top of that, you had Tommy Dreamer. And I get it. He put out this apology. But to be honest, like in my opinion, I was just like fed up. Like I hate to come across as like negative, but I was completely like, he came across as very, very unlikable during this show. The things that he said were so bad and so out of touch that every time he spoke, it just got worse and worse. And it was astonishing to me that he would even say that, and the way that he started comparing what she went through, what the flight attendant went through, to people being offended over his ponytail. I mean, all of those comments were just completely ignorant, and it was just bad. It was bad, and I think this definitely shined a huge light. And I even got a little bit more upset too, because obviously when you touch on subjects like this, and as somebody I consider myself pretty vocal and pretty opinionated, and I put put out this simple tweet just basically telling people, like, women are not objects. This tweet was not meant to be taken badly in any way. And this completely brought upon a bunch of guys who were literally just like trying to start like these very sexist fights. And I was just thinking to myself, I know, based on like the political atmosphere and based on everything that we have seen in the last couple of years, even, in regards to politics and the way that people think, it was still very, very irritating. I'm not even going to say surprising, but it was irritating to see some of the comments that were being written to me about sexism and some of the really backwards thoughts that people have about women. And it was so bad. And that's why I was upset, and that's why I tweeted it out. And I wasn't the only one, and I'm not just saying that women were upset. A lot of men were upset during this too, and they should be. Like, people should be upset because it was not right. And then on top of that, Tommy Dreamer just said some really, really bad stuff. And, you guys can go and rewatch the episode if you haven't seen it, etc. Go read the transcripts, man. It was bad. And that's why I made sure to, obviously talk about it. And it was one of the most, in my opinion, it was one of the most incriminating episodes of Dark Side of the Ring that I have seen.
So I have one more question for you, and we can move on. But I think your perspective on this is very valuable, not only to our show, but to wrestling fans in general. Last year, there was the hashtag #MeToo, and it affected wrestling. We saw a lot of stories come out. Now, the timing of the plane ride from hell, knowing some of these stories that were in here, I didn't even really put two and two together until I talked about it with Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio. But what do you think about the timing of putting an episode like this out, 1 year after what we went through last year when, a lot of these women wrestlers were telling these stories that were horrendous and about how their voices are muted. And so I don't know if you even put that together or not, but like, what do you think about the timing of them putting this episode out after what we went through last year?
See, I don't even associate it with timing because sexual assault is something that happens every single day. And I'm sure there's like facts and statistics of, things that have been surveyed. And I'm sure that information is out there. But sexual assault is something that happens every single day at some part of the world. So like for me, like I didn't associate it with timing. When I went into watching this episode from Plane Ride from Hell, I wasn't expecting all of this to be essentially the topic that everybody was talking about. I came into this thinking, we're going to get some funny stories of, Sean Waltman cutting Michael Hayes' hair off and putting it in a Ziploc bag. I thought I was just going to get a bunch of random stories like that, And no, it ended up being something, the grander story to take away from that ended up being something different. And again, it wasn't even just the stories from Plane Ride from Hell, but it was also the commentary that was said by people that were talking in the present about it.
No, I think that's a great point. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because for anybody that's kind of watched these shoot interviews and gone down that YouTube rabbit hole, you have heard the story. I mean, multiple times over the last 20 years, the Plane Ride from Hell story, and it's always been said in a jovial manner, right? It's always been funny, even though, I mean, also the insanity of it, but it's always been presented in a very like, this is what goes on, this is the boys, this is what happens in wrestling. But I remember, and Garrett, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when that story broke out, and it was taken very seriously that this incident happened where it was total anarchy. The documentary, though, Dark Side of the Ring, they did a good job at giving you the important pieces, but they were missing some key things. Like, there were two planes. It wasn't just one plane that these things happened on. I think, what was it? The Vince McMahon Undertaker wrestling thing when they started wrestling in the aisles, that was on another flight.
Yeah.
I know that in the report it said that Vince was there. I think, as
I
far as
think
I
he was
remember,
there.
Vince was on I think they mentioned, they were alluding that Vince was on the flight, but Vince was on another flight. I believe Linda was on the flight with Michael Hayes.
Okay, that makes some sense.
I could be wrong because I remember the story about Michael not realizing where the bathroom was. And
okay, so that's a story that's different.
Right.
I think that might have been even on a different flight, because there were multiple flights where things kind of got out of hand. And this one specifically. So I'll tell you what I did when I saw that thing. When I watched it, thinking, okay, and Tempest, we'll get your quick thoughts on this in a second. I was thinking, why, if everyone is so afraid for their jobs in WWE, even back then, nobody wanted to do anything that could even resemble any sort of negativity to get them fired. And I thought, if Vince is on that flight, why are these guys going nuts? They should have been a little bit more responsible. And then I started to think, gosh, I don't think he was actually on that flight. I went to read the Observer recap from 2002, Dave's report, and then the following week's report. He reported that Vince and Linda were not on that flight. So
fascinating.
That is, part of this whole puzzle with this documentary. It's like, okay, if you got one thing wrong, but then again, if you have Jim Ross and if you have some of these other guys saying Vince was on the flight, then you probably believe the eyewitness there. So that's just one of the other things that is kind of frustrating. But overall, I just wanted to finish up with Tempest's thoughts if he wanted to add anything, and then we can move on.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaways now that it's been a few days and there's been so much discourse online, the thing that's really stuck out to me is so many people are focusing on what Tommy Dreamer said or the impact that this will have on Ric Flair's career going forward. He puts on a statement yesterday and people go back and forth on that. And all of these things are not the important part to me, because I feel like there's been not enough discussion about the impact that this actually has on the women involved. Because, you have these moments that are far too common in wrestling and history, and then you've got people like Tommy Dreamer in the documentary dismissing it, and meanwhile you've got women who have been dealing with this sort of thing and have to then go to therapy and deal with this for the rest of their life. They get maybe a spot on a documentary 20 years later to say their piece, and that's kind of it. I think that is really the more important part of all this that I wish was getting discussed a little bit more. And it has been by certain people for sure. And the discussion of what wrestling has done to women and sexual assault. And that's a very important conversation to have. I just wish that was more the focus of this rather than forgiveness of certain people saying things that they didn't mean to or what have you.
I think it's a great point. Denise, is there anything else you wanted to wrap up with based on what Tempest said before we move on?
Man, just be kind to people overall. Just be a good person. And
Exactly.
if certain things that aren't supposed to trigger you, you might be the problem. And just educate yourself and just get better. And again, I saw a lot of the comments that were sent to me about how I don't even want to say men, how some guys view women. And if you're one of those guys or even one of those women that still feels that way about other women too, just take the time and educate yourself. That's it.
Did you block them?
No, I muted them. I blocked and muted some depending on who it is. Not on who it is, but on what was said. Because sometimes I like to have people just screaming in the air. I think it's hilarious when they're muted and I don't even see any of their posts. And some people brag. Some people brag that they get blocked and they see it as like a trophy. So I'm like, true. I'm not even going to block you. I'm going to mute you and you're just going to be yelling at the air.
That's awesome. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us through this. It's a hard topic to talk about, but I thought we have Denise here, and I wanted to really get her perspective on it because I thought it was very valuable on the night that the documentary happened. So let's actually talk about some exciting news. Big upcoming week for AEW Grand Slam, Arthur Ashe Stadium. Andrew, how excited are you? And this is I've kind of joked and said, I wish this is the show that I wish I could have gone to. I wanted to be at All Out, so that was the one I went to. But man, if I could have been at two shows, these would have been the two shows.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's my backyard, right? I don't think I've ever been to a wrestling show this close. I mean, the other closest one would be the Garden or HBS Arena that they just built. But to be 7 minutes away for me to get on a Long Island Railroad train and be dropped off at the footsteps of the arena and then back home like within a couple of minutes, I think it's fantastic. I mean, that's really, for my own travel, reasons, I'm pretty excited for the show. But the fact that we may get 20,000 people in that building, they just opened up more tickets. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's interesting to me. And obviously, the show's going to be awesome. It's stacked, and we'll go down that laundry list of unbelievable matches. But one thing that's fascinating here, and I emailed Dave right before the show, and I didn't expect to hear back from him in time, but I did. So I caught him at a I guess, Garrett, that sweet spot opening to get a response from Dave when he's not writing 80,000 pages of the Observer. So
yeah, this is the perfect day, actually.
Perfect day. I know. If it's tomorrow, forget it. You know, I'm big on like wrestling history and you know, statistics and facts and things like that, especially in New York City. You know, we have not had, and by my own numbers, technically speaking, we have not had a show have 20,000 people in attendance in New York City. I'm not counting Long Island. I'm not counting New Jersey, which, by the way, the New York Giants and the New York Jets, Denise, don't play in New York. I don't think people realize that. They play at the Meadowlands in a swamp in New Jersey. I mean, it's I'm not knocking it. It's a swamp.
And it takes a century to get back to the city, I may add.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I should have warned you. It's not fun to go there. I used to go to tailgates all the time there, and I stopped because just coming back after a day of drinking like that is impossible. You know, the Ubers are like $200. So it would be the first time that we've had a you know, hit that mark in a very long time. But so I did the math, and I thought it would probably be which is so interesting. It would have been Showdown at Shea 1980 that had 36,000 people in it. And that's as far back as I went for a one-off event. Dave emailed me with a correction. He said there were MSG and Felt Forum double sellouts that hit 24,000 many times from 75 to 84. So, I mean, you're going back 37 years ago, 41 years ago. I mean, you would probably be going back 41 years if you count, you know, one building to watch it in. But if you're counting the Felt Forum, which is next to MSG and Madison Square Garden, 24,000. I mean, this is the biggest show since 1984. Wild to think at the numbers like that, right? And the fact that this is a brand new building. They're the first event ever that wasn't like a city-sponsored event. I think the New York Liberty played there, but it had to do with the tennis association. It was something in working together. So this would be the first real, you know, sporting event in this building, and it looks like Tony Khan is going to be running this building yearly, which I totally welcome.
That is amazing. The number of people that they're going to do. Denise, you were just in the New York area, right? For vacation or something? I saw some photos on Twitter.
I was there for 2 days.
Obviously no wrestling related stuff. I don't think, at least.
No, I was on vacation.
2-day vacation?
Yes, that's all I can afford. And
that's all she could do. That's all she could do right now. She's too busy.
And I'm so backed up.
Man.
Let's just say I couldn't afford those 2 days of vacation. I didn't even want to check my emails. I was scared.
Good for you.
But we were kind of talking off air. If you knew that this show was going to happen, would you have tried to kind of time your vacation with being there at the show this week?
Yes and no. Yes, because I would want to be there. However, because of my post shows, being at the live events always kind of messes up my post show schedule. And I've kind of been having to do a lot of changes in my post shows lately because of, you know, additional work that I've been taking with like GCW and ring announcing and all of that. And I didn't want to have to do that so much. And I wanted to, you know, be available immediately after that show to do my post show.
So let's actually talk about some of these matches. And I want to talk to our guest here in the fourth chair, Tempest. Lots of discussion about Danielson and Omega and how that's going to work and what they're going to do as far as booking. I'm assuming that's probably the match that everyone is most looking forward to. Do you have any thoughts on maybe what the outcome should be or what you would like to see happen during that match?
Well, this is definitely the match I'm most looking forward to. I would be shocked if there was a match that more people were looking forward to than this one. This is a great card, mind you, but come on, this is one of the biggest dream matches that AEW could put on right now. I would very much like to see a time limit draw done well with these two guys because it's been a long time since we saw a time limit draw in AEW. You have to go back to like 2019. They may have done one on Dark with like Brandon Cutler and Peter Avalon last year at some point, but we don't really count that. as far as one that's on television and is promoted and featured, this would be the first time in a long time that they would do something like that. And I think this is a perfect chance for them to do kind of like an Okada Omega moment. This won't go an hour by any means. But if they did like a 20 or 30-minute match and ended with a draw and still have a match of the year candidate, I don't think anybody's going to leave that building disappointed. And then I've seen a lot of people saying maybe this is where you bring back Hangman Page and have the Elite beat down Bryan Danielson after the match, and then Hangman comes out and makes the save, and you can build to that match going forward. I think there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but I think the best way to This is the match that I'm looking at as the appetizer match, where I fully expect Kenny and Bryan to have another match, maybe in 6 months' time, maybe for the title, maybe not, where they absolutely tear the house down and go all out. This will kind of be the warm-up for that, where we've seen in years past great guys like Omega and Ibushi, or Ibushi and Okada have had matches in the G1 where you know they're going to wrestle again later down the line. So they're saving some of their best stuff for that match, but you still walk away with like a 5+ star match in their first encounter. And I think this could be an example of that.
I actually want to go around the room with this one because I think the idea behind what the finish is or how you use this to further promote what they're going to do for the pay-per-view. Andrew, do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see them do? And do you agree with Tempest about the draw?
You know, I should be a radio professional here. I had my channel potted down here. I didn't even think, I'm so conditioned not to think about the time limit draws in AEW because, watching WWE, they don't do time limits anymore. So I think that would be fantastic. And if they do a hell of, a match of the year contender, like Tempest said, I don't think anybody's going to leave that building unhappy. If there's a Hangman running, which I expect them to come back soon. He should be there soon. So I would be shocked personally, and I always go into a show like this with no opinion because then you leave happy, but I would be shocked if people are not leaving that show thrilled that they got to experience, seeing Bryan Danielson's first match in another company in a very long time. You're seeing him and Kenny Omega, which is somewhat of a dream match. It's happened before, but nobody's really seen it. Obviously it's going to be that, but also we got to think about Rampage because you're also going to get a CM Punk match that night.
Yep. Absolutely.
Which Denise, a lot of people aren't talking about.
Denise, you are a giant fan of PWG, and I know you went to a lot of those shows back then. You didn't go to the Omega Danielson one, did you?
No, I did not. I did not go to that show, which now I'm really sad. I mean, I've been really sad. There's a lot of shows that I've had to miss, but obviously, going to PWG, I used to go a lot, when they were running in the Jewish Community Center, back in the day. And then I had a nice time period where I didn't go for a while. And then I started going back again. And I'm so upset that they're running the same day as Extreme Rules, which means I cannot go to this month's show. I was so bummed out too. But I didn't get to see that match in person.
So what do you think about the finish to this match? Are you interested in a draw? Do you want to see an actual, one of the two specifically win convincingly?
I think that given the fact that a lot of people have been talking, and Tempest just mentioned right now about the time limit draw, I feel like that is a really good way to go about things, because what we want and what I want at the end of the day is just a bloody fantastic, brilliant wrestling match. I don't even that's the thing for me, is that I don't want to say I don't care who wins, because that's not necessarily what I want to get, but I'm just saying that I would be cool with whatever happens as long as we get a really good wrestling match. That's what I want. And when you have these two guys like Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson, I have a pretty good feeling that that's what we're going to get. But I mean, it would be interesting though if they were to give Bryan Danielson a nice legitimate win. Obviously it's not for the belt, so they could do that. So
let's stay on Wednesday's show, which is Britt Baker and Ruby Soho, and Denise, we'll stick with you. What did you think of the promos that they did on Friday? I know there was some thought that going that deep and maybe a little, the backstage line with Britt sleeping with people. Like, some people thought that was kind of out of bounds, but otherwise, like, what did you think about that in setting up this match for Wednesday?
So far, I just got to say that I've been liking everything that they have been doing, because even prior to that, they had the whole line on Dynamite where Britt told Ruby about essentially going back to catering, because that's where she spent the last couple of years of her life. So I like what they're doing. Like, if they want to, why not say, so the whole MJF Brian Pillman Jr. story, MJF was saying some stuff, man. He was saying some really good one-liners, man. So if you got the boys doing it, why can't the girls do it too? I feel like I like what they're bringing to the table. And right now, Ruby Soho has a lot of momentum. Britt Baker has a lot of momentum. So might as well, have that, have those two momentums clash with one another. I'm a fan.
All right, I like it. Let me read off the rest of these matches for Wednesday, and I'll get Tempest and Andrew just, kind of what you're interested in watching, and we'll quickly go over Friday as well. So Omega Danielson non-title, Britt Baker versus Ruby Soho is the title match. Cody Rhodes against Malachi Black, FTR versus Darby Allin and Sting, MJF versus Brian Pillman Jr., and we get the Punk interview. Andrew, out of the rest of those matches, what's the next thing you're looking forward to the most?
Which one's the light? Where's the lights out match?
Friday.
That's on Friday. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay,
so Wednesday for you, but Friday for the rest of us.
Wednesday for me. Definitely the Danielson one. I really want to see what Ruby and Britt Baker do. I thought the build was good. I thought that promo, I wasn't as impacted by the promo. I think a lot of people also have to remember that these guys are working things out, right? They're going back and forth with these lines. They're working together. I highly doubt. I'm almost 99.9% sure that there's nothing anybody was upset over in those promos that Ruby Soho and Britt Baker had. Dude, I think the card is just stacked. It's going to be a good TV show. It's going to be a fantastic TV show in a really cool building. I would say probably overall, I would say the lights out match I want to see. I'm really intrigued by, and the CM Punk stuff I'm intrigued by, and obviously the Danielson.
All right, Tempest. What else do you want to see? What would be next on your list after the Danielson and Omega match?
I would have to probably say Ruby Soho and Britt Baker. I've just been such a fan of everything that Ruby Soho has done since arriving in AEW. She's different. All of her moves are super crisp and dynamic, and she just brings a different kind of layer and performance to anything else that the rest of the women in the AEW women's division have been doing. So I'm very much looking forward to see that. But honorable mention I want to give is I'm really looking forward to the CM Punk live interview that's going to be on Dynamite this week, because we've seen a lot of CM Punk kind of being like, happy to be here. Come watch my match against Darby Allin. I'm so happy to be back in wrestling. Like happy, jovial CM Punk. And that's been great. Obviously, it's working for him. But I feel like we're going to get an interview where he gets to come out and cut a promo on Team Taz and Will Hobbs and really have a bit more of that bite that we've known CM Punk to have in his career. And I'm very looking forward to seeing that again.
That's a great point, because I've had this conversation on my own podcast on this network, on the Fight Game podcast with my co-host John LaRocca, and we like the Punk feeling out the audience, doing some call and response, but we both said there's a moment when the switch flips, because then he's got to be CM Punk again, and I think this is the moment that you're talking about. And a little bit about Will Hobbs. In my neck of the woods in the Bay Area, Will Hobbs is often wrestling for APW, which is the Bay Area indie promotion. And so at the same time, we had Jeff Cobb, we had Will Hobbs, and we had JR Kratos, who some people will know from New Japan Strong and the NWA folks. And I always thought, I was like, well, these guys are great. They're giant. They're athletic. Will is maybe a little bit beneath those two guys. And so when he came to AEW, I was like, wow, this is really an opportunity for him to stand out. And he has done such a great job with his intensity, with his coolness, with being a heel. It's so amazing, because I've watched him a lot, and so you kind of take it for granted a little bit that these guys, but to see him go to that next level has been so awesome. And I think this program is going to be great, and hopefully that they have something good for Will as well, because Punk is the man right now, and I hope he brings Will up with him. So let's talk about the Friday show, which is CM Punk against Powerhouse Hobbs, the Young Bucks and Adam Cole versus Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express, Chris Jericho and Jake Hager versus Men of the Year, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. And then, like we just mentioned, Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston against Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer in a lights-out match. So that's your go-home match right there. I mean, that's your end the show match right there, Andrew, because it's got to be last, because it doesn't count, because there's going to be so much craziness going that they don't want to be held accountable for all of the madness that's happening in that match.
So I would recommend people look at the train schedule. All right, if you're taking the Long Island Railroad, it stops after a certain point. So put that into consideration if you're in New York City and you're trying to get back home to Long Island or anywhere, because this is going to be a 2-hour show, so it's going up to 10 o'clock and from 10 to, I guess, midnight, right? Or close to midnight. So they need to get out of there before midnight so people could comfortably get home. I'm just putting that out there. If you're taking the train, so that should close it out. I hope it doesn't close it out at like 12:05 and every half the building is out the door running to get to the train. Because I've done that for a lot of Mets games. That happens. It's the same. It's right next to Citi Field. I mean, it's like you could see the buildings. It's right next door. So. Dude, definitely that lights out match I'm thrilled about. And also something that we all skipped over, and I kind of wanted to touch on this before and I forgot, MJF and Brian Pillman Jr. This is Pillman Jr.'s first big match.
This is actually the match that I'm most looking forward to, aside from the Kenny Omega Bryan Danielson match. It's definitely this one, because I think they've had the hottest story going into this.
It's exactly what Andrew said. It's his big moment. It's his big chance. I feel like when the dark side about his dad came out, there was a little bit of momentum to kind of give him some more visibility. And then, it's been more of late, and I think he's done really good in the role. He is much better of a performer from a charisma perspective than he is as an actual wrestler right now. And I think, those things will sort of combine and peak at a good time for him. And I hope this is kind of the beginning of it, because I've been very entertained by him. And if you're a fan that goes back a few years, to watch him knowing how much I enjoyed his dad's work is amazing. It just kind of trips you out watching and seeing, because if you're a Flying Brian fan, if you were a fan of Brian Pillman from, WWF in 1997, where he's doing this crazy stuff, and then you got like his son, like he even posted yesterday on Twitter, I think it was a photo of him as a baby being held by his dad right next to Owen Hart, and they brought Owen Hart into the AEW family, and Martha Hart agreed that they're going to do some stuff, and so lots of really good stuff that they can talk about, and I'm really excited for Wednesday and then for Friday, because to me, Friday so far for Rampage, outside of that first show with CM Punk, has kind of been like, I'll catch it on Saturday morning. It's not necessary that I watch it, but I think I gotta watch that show live, right? Like, that's a big show, 2 hours. Yeah.
I think you're gonna have to. Oh, by the way, just a little correction. So they're taping half of Dynamite before the show, and the other half after. So it's from 7 to 8 or 7 to whatever. They're going to have a couple matches for Rampage. They go to Dynamite. And then they're doing the other half of Rampage after that.
That's pretty smart, actually.
Which makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, you could go through some of the other Rampage stuff, but you want to keep Kenny Omega on the second half, and you want to keep Minoru Suzuki and for the Lights Out match on the second half too, to kind of keep the energy up where people aren't leaving. 100%. I mean Rampage. I keep saying Dynamite. I don't know why. My brain stuck on this.
Another nice scoop there for Scoop Zarian. Perfect. Right.
I'm working on. By the way, I have something. I'm dropping probably tomorrow. It has to do with AEW. I just cannot get this confirmation, but I'll be dropping it. But I'll leave a little teaser. It's a addition to something that's very limited in AEW.
So is this possibly a scoop for people to tune into Mad Men on Thursday?
No, I think I don't have the patience to wait till Thursday. I was sworn to not say it right now because I need to double confirm this before.
Yeah.
If I don't want, because we were talking off the air, Garrett and I, and he's like, that's a little weird. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm piecing it together.
Yeah. All right. I know we've already done a little more than I thought. Actually, I just looked at the clock. But let's. I want to finish off this show before, and I'll say this for Tempest so he can start thinking about it. We always end this show with our performers of the week, and we start on Tuesday through Monday. So you look at last Tuesday through yesterday, and who was your performer of the week for that week. Before we get there, I have two WWE related things. And I want to start this with Andrew because I know Andrew's got a lot of insight into WWE and why they do things. So last night, they had been teasing that Roman Reigns and the Usos were going to face the New Day. And that is a big match for Raw. We talked about the rating stuff from last week. And then they do that match to open the show. And then they come back and they close with Roman Reigns again, with Big E and Bobby Lashley in a triple threat match. So my question to you, Andrew, is what does this say about these two separate brands? Is this more of a ratings thing? After last week, they wanted to make sure that the ratings were strong, because I saw the rating that came out, 1.79 million and 0.49 in the demo. So definitely up from last week.
Yeah.
Some of that is a lesser football game, I believe, as well. But is this something that we can look forward to them doing more, or do you think this was just a reaction to the rating from last week?
Well, I think we need to go back a couple months when the plan for the draft was scheduled for early September, right? So now they have a 1 month window where things kind of got off the rail. Wouldn't it make? I mean, let's go back a week, right? How much more sense does it make if Big E is drafted to Raw, then says that he's cashing in the following week, then he cashes in, but then you have teased the Roman stuff, and then Roman shows up on Raw to kind of be like, hey, now you're on this other brand. You were talking crap to me for all these months, and then now all of a sudden you're on the other brand. It makes a lot more sense if they were able to tell that story. Just to fill in blanks here, a little bit. I was always told that once Big E got it, he was going to cash in on the Raw side. He was going to they were doing the draft and he was cashing in. So this kind of makes more sense with that. But, this is that network play that we're going to see moving forward, because you got to keep the numbers up on both. You can't act like one is a B show when it's on two separate channels like this. And we're not even talking about like how it was on UPN when it was on regular network. Everybody knows UPN is a B level or C level channel. It wasn't a mainstream top 4, top 5, over the air broadcast channel.
Right.
So, them doing this, it makes a lot of sense. You're keeping both brands happy. You're still getting to see some of these guys that you normally don't see on the other one. And you know what? If I'm USA Network, I'd be thrilled that Roman Reigns is on there because he's a ratings juggernaut, and we saw the ratings go up slightly, but overall, Roman brings eyeballs. And
he's their top.
How could you not want that?
He's their top regular star, and anytime USA can get that, I'm sure they're 100% for it. Now they would also be for a Brock Lesnar. They did get John Cena. John Cena crossed over to both shows. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I know the draft is coming. Survivor Series is coming, which is a mixed brand show. But it just makes me wonder, whenever I see the crossover like that, I just wonder why it just doesn't exist. Why do you separate the shows if you're not going to take it super seriously when you don't have to? Yeah. Tempest, what was your thought about what they did last night and the crossover between the two brands?
I think I follow very much the same line of thought as you guys. I think it makes all the more sense to have a guy like Roman Reigns be on as much television as possible, especially during a time right now where you can see that ticket sales go down when John Cena isn't there or when Brock Lesnar's not on the show. When you need as much help to sell tickets and draw ratings as possible, I don't really understand why they wouldn't have their biggest stars on as much television as possible. And man, everyone says that, they're hot-shotting these angles, and they are. They're not planning them at least a week in advance to advertise them by any means. But if this is what it takes to get good WWE programming on a weekly basis, do whatever you got to do, man. Have Roman Reigns on as much television as possible. Have big things happening in the main event. Have big triple threat, awesome main event matches with your 3 biggest main event stars going right now. I only see that as a win.
Denise, I'll let you shut this topic down for us. What were your thoughts about Monday Night Raw?
I gotta say, as somebody who watches and covers Raw every single week, this was a recent Raw edition of Raw that I thoroughly enjoyed. Top to bottom, watching live with commercial breaks, you name it, the full 3 hours. I was very entertained with Raw. I mean, yeah, there were some things that I wasn't crazy about, like the whole Doudrop Eva Marie match was kind of a mess, but there were a lot of really strong moments on the show. I liked the way that they kicked it off. The middle portion was pretty good. The ending was fantastic. So I got to say that I enjoy both of, everything that happened. But when it comes to the brand and the brand split, I don't mind the brand split. I know a lot of people want to get rid of it, but I don't mind it whatsoever. I do think that if they took the time to, not book these rematches over and over and actually got creative with the talent that they have on their shows, I think that the brand split could be done in a good and interesting way. They just got to get rid of not, doing other rematches and that sort of stuff. And yesterday's show was a reminder that they could put on a really great episode of Raw. And I think that's the thing that's sometimes a little bit irritating, is that they know how to put on these great shows, these entertaining shows. They just don't always do it. There's I feel like a lot of waiting around, a lot of saving things, and a lot of confusion. And if you just take that all away and put forth, all that you can on a show, they do a good show. So yeah, I really enjoyed last night's Raw.
All right, let's before we get to our performers of the week, one more topic, and this one can be a quick one. I have one question for all 3 of you. We'll start with our guest in the 4th chair. NXT 2.0, what they did last Tuesday, does it get you excited for tonight's episode 2 of NXT 2.0? Are you excited to see where they go next with this refreshed version?
No, I am not. I am not. I've been watching NXT for a long time now. Of course, Chopper Pete and I have been reviewing NXT week to week over on the Wrestle Talk podcast channel. So make sure you give that a subscribe if you want to hear more of my specific thoughts in each week of NXT. But no, it wasn't what I was looking for out of NXT. And I know they're going in a different direction, but it feels like they're almost trying to serve 2 different masters and not really committing to either one, where they're still doing matches for NXT, and it's a developmental brand with a bunch of young guys like Braun Breaker and Von Wagner and guys like that we haven't seen before. And that's not bad by any means, but it also feels like it's trying to be a main roster show. It was kind of booked the same way as a main roster show, with a guy who's in the main event losing in the first match, and that just not really meaning anything. You've got the weird names like Braun Breaker and Von Wagner. And then you've also got matches that go 2 minutes, there's a DQ, and then they restart as a 6-person tag. And if they were just going to do a full-on main roster show, then you could do that. But I also feel like it's just main roster light. And I don't know that that's really going to satisfy anyone, and it really doesn't satisfy me.
All right, Andrew, you talked to us last week about the look and how they wanted to change certain things. You told us who was actually in the building, so you're pretty in tune with what's going on there. What was your take on NXT 2.0, and are you looking forward to tonight's episode?
I did it again. Jeez, I'm an amateur here. Such an amateur. I have to tell you, one thing I am looking forward to seeing is if they fix some of those production shots of the empty white wall that was so blatantly not finished. I have to tell you, I had a very different outlook of NXT. I thought they did a very good job for presenting key people in key positions. You can see the direction they're going on. They're big on Rick Steiner's son. I didn't expect it to fall apart like everybody did. Like, not everybody, but a lot of people thought, oh, it's over. You're just going to get a bunch of, WWE house names and that's it. I think it's going to be a blend. I think eventually the Tommaso Ciampas and the Garganos will be kind of phased out. You could see already what their direction is. It's too soon for me to say. Honestly, listen, I loved NXT from 2014 on, 2016, 2017. Fantastic. It wasn't a developmental product. It was more of their third show. And it had buzz because there was nothing else available. It had following because you got to see guys like Nakamura and Ricochet and Matt Riddle for the first time on television, where a lot of people didn't see. So these guys came with hype, and the momentum continued. But, they're in a different era. You don't have this independent talent accessible like you did. And if you do have a mega star like Nakamura, or let's say, I think Nakamura would be a better example, or a Bobby Roode, for example, right? If you have those guys that have name recognition, they're already finished, right? They don't need to go to finishing school. They're already finished. You got to worry about your two other brands like Raw and SmackDown that are competing for major ad revenue. The money that's tied up in these shows being successful is in the billions. Why would you put a Nakamura? You get access to a guy like that. And by the way, we're going to be talking about the AEW guys soon. When these contracts end in a couple of years, there will be people that go over. So if you have an opportunity to get, an MJF, are you going to shove him down to the developmental, or are you going to bring him to the main roster and have him debut there? The focus has shifted. And that is always what's being said to me, is that they no longer have to have a third brand like this, a top tier third brand. They need to now develop the next line of talent. And if people are available that could go over to the main roster, they're gonna grab them and they're gonna take them to the main roster. They're not gonna put them into developmental for 2-3 years like an Adam Cole. 4 years, Adam Cole.
All right, one more question before we get Denise to end this topic, which is Rex Steiner was the greatest professional wrestling name of all time. His last name is Rex Steiner. His dad's name is Rick Steiner. They gave him Rex Steiner, and at the last minute changed it to a very bad pro wrestling name, Braun Breaker. Why in the blue hell did they do that?
I
wish I had an answer.
I you were asking Andrew.
Sorry. I was asking Andrew.
Everybody.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mike. I was actually, I zoned out and I was thinking, well, if Braun Strowman goes back, you can't have more than 2 Brauns. What the hell are you going to do? You're going to change him back?
That crossed my mind. That crossed my mind too, the whole Braun thing. And I was just like, oh, I wonder if this, I don't know, man. I mean, Braun Breaker to me sounds like an action figure. It sounds like a toy. So I can see their line of thinking in that sense, but I'm reaching here. I mean, it was not, when you have a name like Rex Steiner, I would stick to that. Yeah, Braun Breaker kind of sounds a little goofy.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, some sort of cartoon villain from a 60s cartoon or something. Okay, I was
gonna say, it sounds like a Power Ranger villain or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain or something like that.
There you go.
Listen, aren't we in that category at this point? Everybody's like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle villain in that company.
Yes.
We also have a Bearcat.
Oh my god!
A Bearcat, yeah.
We got a Bearcat,
and that's a recycled name from yesteryear of Bearcat Wright, who was a very historical wrestling figure from the past. So very interesting. I did not expect. Okay, so as we do, we get to our performers of the week when we end this show. I'm going to go first because I know that most of our focus here on this show is WWE. It's AEW. But my performers of the week are from New Japan Pro Wrestling. The G1 has begun. Now, this G1 field is not as impressive as it has been in the past. You could go back 2 and 3 years where I made time in my day to watch every single match on the G1. Now, maybe I had a little bit more time 2 and 3 years ago. This year, I do not, so I am doing more picking and choosing, but I'm very happy that I did pick and choose this match, which was Kazuchika Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Okada wins with like 20 seconds remaining on the time limit. This is classic pro wrestling. This is beautiful pro wrestling. 2 of my favorite wrestlers of all time. They put on an absolute classic. kudos to Okada, kudos to Tanahashi. There are other guys on the first two nights of the G1 who you could put in this category as well. But let's go to our guest. I gave him a little bit of a heads up that we were going to be doing this. Tempest, do you have a performer of the week for us?
I do, and I was thinking of going with Adam Cole for his match with Frankie Kazarian on Dynamite last week, which I thought was just about as perfect a TV opener as you could possibly get. But I will also be going to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I'll be going with Shingo Takagi for his match with Tomohiro Ishii on night 1 of the G1 Climax. Like you, I am not super into this G1 this year, especially today with the news that Tetsuya Naito is having to pull out due to injury. It just seems like everything that can go wrong with New Japan this year is going wrong. But, man, if you put Shingo Takagi and Tomohiro Ishii in the ring together, there is nothing that you could do save from hitting the building with a meteorite that would ruin that match. And sure enough, they had one of the best matches I've seen all year. So Shingo Takagi's my pick.
Oh, we got a couple of New Japan ones here. All right, Denise, who is your performer of the week?
All right, I'm going to break the mold, so here we go. Mine, because this is very recent in my memory, I got to go with Bobby Lashley. And the reason why I'm going with Bobby Lashley is because I just thought that yesterday he came across as just so aggressive, so phenomenal. He brought so much energy to the show. I mean, I was really digging him yesterday, and I just thought he stood out so much more than he normally does. And that's saying a lot, saying that he's been a very strong portion of Raw, obviously, as the former champion. And I got to say that last night, really good stuff from him. So I'm going to go with Bobby Lashley.
It's a great one. We kind of mentioned it, but the Randy Orton and Bobby Lashley match from last week, I thought was one of the best matches of the week. So yeah, little underrated there, I think, when it comes to stuff, because he's on 3 hours of Raw. But yeah, what a year Bobby Lashley has had. Andrew, you can finish this off for us.
I would say Roman. I think he looked great in that match. I think he was a great addition to that show last night. I'm gonna go Roman. If I go a little bit further back, I would say Ciampa, because we didn't even talk about him winning the NXT title.
Yes, Tommaso Ciampa to me is he's the man there. Unfortunately, like you said, it does look like he may be being phased out. I mean, maybe we'll see a Braun Breaker and Tommaso Ciampa match tonight or in the very near future, which will be really fun because you got the vet against the rookie, and they're trying to make this rookie look great. And who better than with Ciampa? But yeah, no, it's a great call. Everyone had great calls here. Before we get out of here, I wanted to give our guest the opportunity to tell people who may be seeing him and don't know the Twitter and the social media and the Wrestle Talk stuff. I wanted to give you the floor so you could let people know where to find you.
All right, well, I will rattle off as many plugs as I can. So, of course, you can find me over at Wrestle Talk and on Twitter at TempestWT. You can follow me on YouTube, subscribe Tempest the Wrestler right over here. I tend to do more wrestling video essay type content over there, and that's a whole lot of fun. I love doing that. But otherwise, I review NXT and SmackDown on the Wrestle Talk podcast channel with Chopper P. Quinnell, and do edited reviews of NXT and AEW Rampage in the news videos on the Wrestle Talk main channel. And of course, your Quizzlemania champion on Parts Fun Known. I believe that's all of our channels. I'm not on No Rolls Barred, but go and subscribe to that anyway, because who doesn't love a good board game?
All right. So again, check out Denise's tweet. Denise is coming with Show 100. Andrew,
should we mention next week's guest, BTW?
That's up to you. Well, I'll leave that in your court.
I think we should. I think we should announce next week's guest, because next week we are going to have none other than, drum roll please, we're going to have Court Bauer.
From
He's going to be joining us live next week.
MLW Zone.
Did you like it when I said I would leave it in your court?
I did. I like that. That was good thinking. Good thinking.
But wait, how about your court? You're in front of a court.
Yeah, so I'm in front of Arthur Ashe Stadium, man. Hoping that I could be where you're going to be tomorrow, or wishing. Anyway, find me on the Fight Game Podcast with John LaRocca Thursday nights. But yeah, everyone knows where to find us. But So happy to do this. Can't wait to do it next week with Court. I hope we didn't jinx anything.
No, don't say that. He said yes. We're good to go.
He's breaking his toe tomorrow. He's not coming.
So I'll tell the story here because we probably won't have time to tell it next week, but it's a quick Court Bauer story. WrestleMania 31, which was in the Bay Area, Court Bauer had put on the very first Wale Mania. And I think because it was a brand new show for WrestleMania weekend, he was like, he thought he was going to get a lot of people there, wrestling fans, but it's a mix of wrestling fans and sort of a nightclub atmosphere because the main event portion was going to be Wale doing a hip hop concert. And in the beginning was like a podcast. So you kind of have this mix of fan bases. And so Court said to Dave, he's like, hey, if you have any Observer readers who want to come, we'll discount their tickets. Just give me a number. So I got to work directly with Court on that. So now, gosh, like 7 years ago. So I got to hang out with Court, hang out with Dave. I got to meet Kevin Sullivan that night because Court's buddy MSL introduced me to Kevin Sullivan. But what a crazy night. Conan, like all those guys, it was a really fun night. So that was my first time meeting Court. And he's been a guest on Wrestling Observer Radio and even going back to Figure 4 Daily with Bryan Alvarez years and years and years ago. So I think our audience is very familiar with Court. It'll be great to have him on next week. So, all that being said, I'm Double G for Denise, for Andrew, for our guest Tempest. See you when we see you. Peace out.